Okay, so when you picture ancient Egypt, what comes to mind? I bet it's towering pyramids, golden pharaohs, and all those intricate hieroglyphs, right? But what if I told you that incredible civilization didn't just pop into existence, that the real groundwork was laid by a mysterious culture long before the first pharaohs ever wore a crown? So, who were these people? Who laid the foundation for everything we associate with ancient Egypt? Well, today, we're going to dig deep into the sands of time to uncover the secrets of the Naqada I culture. All right, so our story kicks off way before the First Dynasty, in a time that archaeologists call Predynastic Egypt. This is the era before the pharaohs, a time of incredible change and innovation. Just take a look at this timeline right here. You can see it's sandwiched between an even earlier culture and the later periods that eventually gave us the first pharaohs. That period in the middle, Naqada I, from about 3900 to 3500 BC, that's our sweet spot. That's our window into the very dawn of Egyptian civilization. So what exactly was the Naqada I culture? Think of it as the bedrock, the DNA of what would become ancient Egypt. These were the communities, mostly down in Upper Egypt, who started developing the art, the social structures, and the very ideas of power that would define the pharaohs for thousands of years. Now here's the tricky part. The Naqada I people didn't leave us any writing, no grand monuments to read. So how in the world do we know anything about them? Well, the answer is in the one thing they left behind tons of: pottery. These are their stories, told in clay. And I know what you might be thinking. A simple pot? Really? But trust me, these clay vessels are basically time capsules. They hold all these amazing clues to their daily lives, their art, and even the power structures of their society. So archaeologists, like the legendary Flinders Petrie, had to classify all their finds just to make sense of it all. The most iconic is probably this black top ware. You see that polished red body with that cool black rim? That comes from a really special firing technique. They also made simpler polished red packs, and even these awesome fancy forms. I mean, pottery shaped like animals. But the most fascinating clues, the real juicy stuff we're after, are found on what's called white cross-lined ware, or seaware for short. This is where they actually started to paint on the pots, giving us a true window into their world. Okay, this slide right here is super important because it shows a crucial shift. During Naqada I, you've got artists using white paint on a red background, creating these free-flowing scenes of daily life. But later, in Naqada II, the style totally flips. It becomes brown paint on a cream background, and the designs get way more rigid, more standardized. Now, that's not just an artistic choice, you guys. That's a huge clue that society itself was becoming more controlled and more hierarchical. And some of those early paintings on the seaware, well, they give us our first kind of chilling glimpse into a world that was becoming a lot more complex and a lot more violent. At first glance, a lot of these scenes look pretty idyllic, right? We see hunters with what might be the earliest known pictures of dogs on leashes. We see people guiding their livestock, fishermen out on boats with harpoons. It really is a snapshot of everyday life on the Nile. But that is not the whole story, not by a long shot. Because hidden among these peaceful scenes is evidence of something much darker, the beginnings of organized conflict. And this idea is captured perfectly on one very special pot, known as the Brussels jar. It shows a scene that's just totally different from anything else from this early period. What you're seeing on this jar is a victorious warrior, hands raised in triumph, with smaller, defeated figures literally tied to him by ropes. Now that sounds familiar? It should. Archaeologists are pretty sure this is the direct ancestor, the prototype of that iconic pose of the pharaoh smiting his enemies, a symbol of power that would last for 3,000 years. The idea of conquest and kingship, it started right here, on a pot. Okay, so it wasn't all just about war. Other artifacts show us that Naqada I society was also sophisticated, deeply artistic, and way more connected than you might think. I mean, these people were not isolated at all. They were importing cedar wood from all the way up in modern-day Lebanon, marble from the Greek islands, and obsidian and gold from Nubia to the south. This was a thriving culture plugged right into the center of a massive ancient trade network. We also see their artistry just explode in everyday objects, like cosmetic palettes, for grinding makeup. They start out as these simple geometric shapes, but pretty soon the craftsmanship just skyrockets, and they're being carved into these beautiful animal forms, turtles, fish, hippos. It really shows a growing skill and a real desire for symbolic decoration. So let's recap. We have art, we have trade, we have organized warfare. All of this is leading us to one final critical question. Who was in charge here? Who was leading these warriors and organizing these vast trade routes? To find the answer, we have to look at our last set of clues. And they come in the form of these small but incredibly significant ivory carvings. They show these men with long, pointed beards wearing these long cloaks, clearly figures of authority. But the most important detail, the real clincher, is what's on their heads. Okay, check this out. On the left, you see the headgear from one of those Naqada I figurines. And on the right, that's the famous white crown of Upper Egypt, the symbol of the pharaoh's rule. I mean, come on, the resemblance is just undeniable. That tall, tapering shape with a little knob at the top, this is no coincidence. This is the origin story of royal power in Egypt. And get this symbol of power dates all the way back to around 3750 BC. That's hundreds of years before the first pharaoh we know by name. The symbols of his authority were already being carved in ivory. Incredible. So you see, the Naqada I people weren't just some warm-up act for the main show. They were the architects. They were the ones who drew the blueprint. They invented the art styles, they set up the trade routes, and they created the very symbols of power that would define one of the world's greatest civilizations. They left no written records, nothing to make it easy for us. We have to piece their whole story together from these decorated pots, little bits of carved ivory, and stones from faraway lands. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other foundational secrets about the birth of Egypt are still out there, just waiting to be discovered under the sand?
Thanks for watching.